Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight, I'm incredibly happy to say that we are joined by Killer Orange Cat in tonight's collaborative video. We've also narrated some stories over on his channel. I've got to say, the ones I narrated for him I really enjoyed, and I do recommend you check them out. The link is in the description, and there'll be an on-screen link when this video ends. So for now, I'd like all of you to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. This happened about a year ago. I was on Grindr looking for either fun dates or new friendships. For those of you unfamiliar, it's a social media app designed primarily for gay men. One day I was scrolling and received a new message from a guy called Brian. I took a look at some of his profile pictures, read his bio, and decided that I was interested. We started messaging back and forth, and he seemed to be really kind and charismatic, who really knew how to hold a conversation, something that's very hard to come by on the app. A few days went by and we eventually exchanged numbers, and he seemed nice enough. I wanted to see if he was a greater person as he was over text message, so I asked him if he wanted to go on a date with me, and he very happily agreed. So I scheduled a date with him. The plan was that I was going to first drive to his place, pick him up, and grab some lattes at my favorite local coffee shop. It was around 6 in the evening, and I was sending him a text message to tell him that I was leaving my house, to which he responded with a quaint, "I can't wait to meet you." I smiled at his supposed kindness. Then, in the middle of driving to his house, I received a phone conversation that goes like this. "Hey Brian, what's up? Hey, quick change of plans. I'm feeling tired and would rather not go out. Would you be okay at staying at my place? We can watch some shows and order takeout." I mean, that's not what I really had in mind. I'd like to go out and do things on the first date. "Oh, don't be such a buzzkill, just come over. I won't show you a bad time." As he spoke on the phone, I got a really strange feeling in my gut, like something was wrong about how he spoke to me. Before I met him, I had imagined his voice and inflections to sound a lot more light-hearted because of the way we messaged. It was very whimsical and fun, but over the phone, he spoke like he was in a hurry, perhaps slightly frantic. However, despite my feelings, I decided I would accept his offer. Perhaps he was just tired or stressed from the workday. I pulled into his driveway and he greeted me at his door. He looked like his picture, and he was very handsome. He was wearing fashionable glasses, and his dark, straight hair contrasted with his light skin. When we go inside, I was greeted by one of his roommates who was playing Dark Souls in the living room. I wanted to be polite, so I approached the roommate and introduced myself. I didn't want to come off as rude to Brian in case this date ended up going really well. While I'm talking with his roommate, Brian calls my name and beckons me to walk inside his bedroom. I politely excused myself and followed Brian into his room. When I walked inside, I saw something straight out of No Sleep. Only this was right in front of me. There were candles lit all around, and when I got a closer look, I noticed there were several altars scattered across the room, effigies of ancient-looking figures, animal bones, and jars with unidentifiable liquids inside them. Some sort of dagger next to a cat's skull. The whole shebang. I don't remember all the altars, but I remember a couple. One of them was on the floor, and there was a glass container that held some kind of yellow liquid around animal skulls surrounding the container. Another altar was on a shelf next to his bed, and this one had a few candles surrounding some kind of doll with its eyes sewn shut and a hand missing. Now that one was super creepy and bizarre. A part of me was telling me to nope the hell out of there immediately, but I thought that maybe I was overreacting to someone's religious choice. I didn't know much about cult religions, so I didn't want to assume that this guy had any kind of malintent. Plus, I can be a little overreactive at times, so I decided that I was just gonna go along for the ride. When we walked into his room, I wanted to calm my nerves, and because I have a really curious mind, I decided to ask Brian about what the altars were for. He told me that he would tell me about them later. A weird response, but okay. I brushed it off, thinking that it might be just a bit eccentric. I can be a little weird too, so I tried to be empathetic and understanding. Then I point to one of the altars and ask about it. He frowns and scowls. "Don't touch that." His voice startled me. His intense inflections paired with his angry expression sent a lump straight to my throat, and I felt threatened. I was almost 4 feet away from the altar, not even close to touching it, and yet he yelled at me like a father yelling at his kid to stop messing around at church. I was confused, and thinking I had done something wrong, I apologized. In the blink of an eye, his scowl turned to a smile, and he kindly invited me to sit with him to watch a show. What really weirded me out was the fact that his smile kind of felt genuine. He had gotten angry, but all of a sudden he didn't care, and served me up a really kind disposition. I was unsure how to process with everything that had just happened, so I decided to sit down with him. He seemed to be acting pretty normal once this ordeal had happened, and we started to talk about ourselves. After some time, he became really sweet and soft-spoken, similar to how we were over messages, and we were able to share some stories about our lives. It was starting to feel like it was an actual date, and my nerves subsided a bit, and I was probably just overthinking everything. He then turns on his TV. Now, mind you, I was still a little freaked out by his random outbursts, so I was on guard. So I offered to invite his roommate to come and hang out with us. Brian's roommate seemed like an old average Joe when I met him, and I just wanted someone else to be there to act like a buffer. I wanted to see how he would act around other people, but when I gave him my idea, he immediately shuts me down, and his personality switched from easygoing to stressed and angry. He started cussing out his roommate to join me, making it clear that he absolutely hated him. The switch was jarring. I also started to panic. Then he changed the subject and began to talk about me. He said that he found me really attractive, and in the process his fingers started to graze my thigh. I needed a second to collect myself though, so I excused myself to get some water. When I stood up, he immediately slapped my butt and told me not to take too long. I walked out, closed the door behind me, and started to make my way for the kitchen. I was hoping to chat with his roommate, to see if I could ask him about Brian, but he was asleep on the living room couch, so I made a beeline to the cabinets and searched for a cup. I thought about walking out and driving home because I didn't appreciate his sudden touchiness, but I started getting paranoid. He had all those altars, and he didn't tell me what the altars were for. I've seen some horror films about the occult, and I truly had no idea what this guy was capable of. Yes, he was sweet at times, but he was showing me some really aggressive behavior. Who's to say that this guy isn't able to put some kind of voodoo curse on me? Dramatic, I know, but you can never really be sure. So I grab my water and cautiously head back to his room. So when I walked back inside, I saw him sitting on the couch with his legs crisscrossed and his eyes closed. When I approached him, I saw his mouth moving but didn't hear anything coming from it. Weirded out, I called his name, but he didn't respond. Strange. I called his name a second time and he opened his eyes, uncrossed his legs and went back to watching TV, without at all addressing what he was doing. What the hell? I was getting really worried, but I did what I could to keep my cool. I didn't want to do anything to upset him or make him lose his cool. I sat next to him on the couch and we started talking. Once again, he was completely normal, unnervingly normal. It's like I was in the same room with a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, except Brian was able to switch between the two seamlessly. I needed to do something. But what the hell was I supposed to do? I couldn't call him out because he might lash out in some way, but I also didn't want to stay because he was freaking me the hell out. I just stay, and I try to devise some kind of plan to get out of there without making him angry. At some point he gets up to grab his phone, and I thought I would try to dish out the same thing he did to me when I went to get water. Maybe it would release the tension that I was feeling. Maybe he'd like it, and I'd make him less aggressive. But regardless, I wanted to try something. I made my move and gave his butt a cheeky grab. Immediately he turned around, swatted my hand away and lunged at me. He had his hand curled up in a fist and he flung it towards my face. His fist was inches away from making a connection with my right cheek, but he stopped mid-punch. In that moment I saw that his eyes were wide open, and his facial expression was cold and emotionless. He was right in my face. My heart was beating so fast that I felt like I was seconds away from an aneurysm. He was looking directly at me, and my eyes started back. At that moment I felt like the prey to his predator. Then he uncurled his fist, put his icy hand on both sides of my face and started to squeeze. "You're so cute." He pulled me in and forced a kiss, and I absolutely did not want to kiss him. But I was paralyzed and couldn't will myself to push him away. His words were patronizing, sort of like he was talking to a dog, and it felt even more like this because he had just scrunched my face against his. I felt disgusted kissing someone who had almost punched me in the face, but there was nothing I could do in that moment. I didn't want to risk annoying him. He slowly pulled away, giving me another sweet smile and sat down, pretending that nothing had happened, just started staring at the TV. I was over this completely. His behavior was becoming more erratic and more unpredictable. His room was creepy as hell, and he clearly had associations with the occult, and frankly he was scaring me. I eventually decided that I just would rather deal with the voodoo-looking altars later than stay in his house and have to put up with the immediate danger. So I snapped myself out of the anxiety-induced trance, stood up and told him that I was starting to get sick and that I wanted to go home. He got angry and tried to convince me to stay the night, but I gathered my courage and insisted that it was time for me to go. He begrudgingly let me leave, but it was clear that my decision pissed him off. But I didn't care anymore. I said my goodbyes and told him that I'd messaged him later. No way, I thought to myself. I got in my car and drove home, shaking and sweating. I felt relieved to get out of there, but nervous that he might try to do something. The uncertainty of it all is what truly shakes me up. But thankfully no actual harm came to me. Who knows what could have happened if I'd have stayed though. I blocked Brian's number as well as his Grindr profile, and even now I keep my own Grindr pictures private. I haven't heard from him since, but I still fear that he's going to try and come after me somehow.
And just remembered a rather uncomfortable situation that happened to me roughly 5 years ago. I'm 21 now. This situation actually occurred when I was underage, probably 16 or 17. And not to get too deeply into personal history, but I had dated girls exclusively throughout high school. I began to also develop an interest in guys that I was extremely insecure about and wanted to keep hidden from friends and family at any cost. And that being said, I still wanted to indulge and would secretly use the internet to explore my sexuality. I don't remember exactly what app it was that this guy and I met on. I want to assume Grindr, but he was actually quite a distance away, so it could have been a number of other dating apps. Regardless, we got into contact with one another and hit it off pretty decently. He was older than me, probably in his mid-20s, and showed no issue with me being underage. Yeah, I know. It was stupid for me to even associate with somebody who'd knowingly commit a crime like that, but I was a stupid, closeted kid. In the first few days of talking to him, he seemed really cool. We talked about sports and music and found a lot of common ground. He was also quite handsome from the pictures he'd send, and certainly someone I'd have interest in. After just a few days, things started to take a turn. One creepy thing that raised a lot of red flags was him sending extremely explicit photos with no warning or context. Sometimes it's welcome, but not all the time, you know. It was a major turnoff, but since men apparently do this all the time, I shrugged it off and pretended to be interested. Then, he started to ask me if I wanted to be his boyfriend. Mind you, this guy lived in California, and I live in New York. I enjoyed having a little pen pal I could talk to about things I dared not share with people around me. But I wasn't going to start some bizarre, exclusive relationship online after just a few days with some loon who likes to show me his genitals during breakfast. At that point, I began to notice this guy was a bit of a whack job. Anyone in their mid-20s is ludicrously desperate/sick if they would ever seriously consider that with anyone so soon, let alone with someone who's underage. I hesitated to answer when he asked, and then said something along the lines of, "Well, we just met, so maybe we could see how things go." Although in actuality, that was just to give me the ability to slowly trail off contact and hopefully lose him. I started to mute his notifications during the day and respond sparingly, only to find just 2 nights later a slew of upwards of 20 texts with him demanding to know where I am, why I'm not texting him, what my answer is, etc. At that point I knew I was dealing with someone unstable, and avoided saying anything negative that set him off, and just expressed that I'm not ready for the commitment he was offering. It was then that he started to blackmail me. I made 2 stupid decisions, besides talking to him in the first place. I gave him my Instagram handle, and sent him nude pictures of myself. He basically said that if I don't be his boyfriend, and text whenever he demands, he'll contact my parents or siblings on Facebook, and tell them I like men, and send them the pictures I sent him. I'd already blocked him on Instagram at that point, but our chat logs documented my handle and gave away my last name, giving him free rein to contact my family. I was sent into a frenzy. I tried to calm him down and beg him not to, but he wouldn't budge. I actually remember talking to him on the phone and pacing around my bedroom in absolute terror as he coldly would tell me the hoops I'd have to jump through in order to keep him from spilling my information. I was on the verge of tears and begged him to keep quiet. I had no idea what to do in that moment, but knew there was no good solution for me, so I just immediately blocked him from my life. I found all of his social media accounts and blocked him, and made sure he'd never contact me again. Thankfully, it worked. Not that this story isn't creepy enough, but the especially weird part was what I discovered after having blocked him. Since I feared that he'd possibly out me on his own Instagram, which had thousands of followers because it was a decently successful photography page, I'd often look him up and make sure I didn't have to report something. That led me to accidentally Google his name rather than type it into Instagram, and the results were truly bizarre. There was some information about his professional work, his photography and acting and whatever, but that wasn't all. There were multiple threads and forums with the title, "Do not talk to that guy." I assume I can't say full names and dox the guy anyway, but I actually can't remember his name right now. It'll come to me, but right now it's missing in my mind for whatever reason. There were dozens and dozens of people who came forward and said that he basically did what he did to me. He'd manipulate people into sending compromising photos, and threatened to leak them when they didn't give him enough attention. I'm trying to remember specifics, but I know several people came forward and said that he messaged members of their family and friends claiming they gave him HIV. Others said he'd send the nude pictures to family members, like he had threatened to do to me. Basically, this guy did this so often and was so prolific at stalking and harassing men that there were forums devoted to him. To this day, I have no idea if he truly contacted anybody I know. I like to think not, but I know that if he did, the reaction would probably be to ignore it. I don't think my family would want to admit to having seen nude pictures I sent out. And I also don't think they think it was their business or place to start a conversation about that kind of secret. I guess I'll never really know, because I sure as hell ain't asking. I actually want to remember his name, so I can see what that sick fuck is up to nowadays. So I hope the last name comes to me. Regardless, let's not meet, you weirdo. ETA. So the inevitable happened and I remembered his name. I searched him up and there's evidence of his photography career, but all the social media related to it is deleted. Most importantly, I can't find that thread about the people outing his awful behavior.
This was started in January of 2019. For some background context, I'm a young gay man living in a very populated city, so weird things are bound to happen, especially when using the gay dating app Grindr. I'm sure you've all heard of it. When this started, I was living in a biggish city in northern Florida, but had plans to move the next week. My two friends had come down to celebrate my moving away, and also one of their birthdays. We hung out in my city for a day and then drove to Miami together. It was a lot of fun for the most part, but this story begins on the last day of my vacationing there. We were at a brunch place preparing to say goodbye to the city and drive back home so that I could pack my things and relocate to where I live now. And I received a notification from Grindr saying that I had received a new message. I opened it up, and the message simply said hi. It was from a blank profile, and it said it was sent using a feature called Explore, meaning the person wasn't local to Miami but lived elsewhere. I replied, not minding the faceless profile, because a lot of men on the app are not open with their sexuality, and might not want to take the risk of people in their actual life finding out about them. We make small talk, exchange names and such, and he seemed like a really nice person. He eventually sent me a picture of him, and he was very attractive looking. He asked me for my number, and I was so flustered by Miami and saying goodbye to our temporary friends that I just gave it to him without thinking about what could come of it, and I regret this dearly. We messaged each other over the next few days, and things seemed pretty normal. We talked a lot, just casual chit-chat, asking about careers, goals, etc. Nothing strange. And then I noticed a notification from the Cash App that I had received $100 from a random username I didn't recognize. The memo was an eggplant emoji, gross, and I was so confused I started texting my friends, telling them how a random person had just accidentally sent me $100, and how he'd have to keep sending me more in order to ask me to return it, because you can only communicate with someone on the app if it's included in a payment. We got a laugh out of this, and I decided to just return the money because I would be really upset if I was on the other end of the equation and had just sent a gracious amount of money to someone random by accident. Before I was able to do that though, my new Grindr friend texted me and said, "Don't ask me for any more, that's all I can give you. I will block you if you ask me to send you more." I was so confused. I never asked this man for money. I've no idea how he even got my Cash App username. I know you can look people up using their phone numbers, but I hadn't even linked my new phone number to the app yet. I replied, asking him how he got my information, but he wouldn't say anything about it. I guess I just dropped it because free money, and I'm an idiot for that. Time goes on and things are getting a little weird between our messages. He begins asking me to send him pictures of my feet, which in of itself isn't weird. I don't like to kink shame, but something just felt very off about him at this point. It's as if I were talking to a new person. I tell him that he needs to calm down a bit, and that this was getting uncomfortable for me, to which he agrees. Time goes by and eventually he insinuates that I should move back to Florida, to the city where he was located, so that he could take care of me. I firmly decline, to which he says, "Well then I'll have to come to you." At this point my alarm bells are going off and I'm thinking, I've got to put an end to this. I don't reply right away anymore, and he tells me he's always wanted to come to where I currently live. I didn't even know how he knew that. I didn't give him any of my social media, and even if I had, there's no way he could have known because I intentionally withheld any information online about me relocating, as I was tired of everyone knowing my business. I've always had my location on Grindr set to off, so he couldn't see where I was or even how many miles away from him. I told him at that point he needs to leave me alone and that I didn't wish to talk to him. I didn't block him though, because I was starting to get paranoid and wanted to have a record of the things he would continue to say in case things got weird, which of course they did. First, he told me he was sorry for lying and sent me a few pictures of what he actually looked like. I hate to sound like a jerk, but something was seriously off with the way this person looked. Almost every picture had a very big, disturbing, and ecstatic smile, and big wide eyes staring directly at the camera, very close up. He was probably in his 30s and looked like he didn't take care of himself very well. His skin was uneven and grey, and he had a short beard that looked like it hadn't been maintained at all, if that makes any sense. One of them looks like it might have just been an accident because his face was blurry, and he was angry and just staring into the camera with a hateful, evil expression on his face. He also sent me a picture of his mouth, but only his big smile. Nothing else was in it. There were pictures of his apartment as well. It looked almost empty, other than a small table with a photograph of unknown people in it. Also, a fire hydrant was there. It was all very weird. I didn't reply to these, and that just resulted in a string of angry texts from him, telling me he wished he'd never met me and that he hates me. Throughout all of the weird, uncomfortable, and filthy messages he sent me, there are a few exceptionally disturbing things. He sent me a link to his YouTube page, which I did end up viewing, and the videos were just him literally talking to himself and making jokes to himself. There were over 10 videos of them, and I was the first viewer, although they'd been up for months. If that wasn't weird enough, whenever he would pause in between sentences in these videos, I could hear faintly in the background what sounded like someone's muffled screaming. And every so often, after hearing the screaming, I would hear him try to hold back a very high-pitched, sinister laugh that sounded nothing like him. I could tell from the sound quality that it was something this man was producing and not a bystander. I also don't think he has many friends. Most of the videos have since been deleted, and I don't know why. I write poetry, and at some point he was begging me to send him my poetry. He also sent me a link to his WordPress, which I also viewed, and the poems were somehow actually very well written, like extremely beautiful poems. But I realized that the things he was saying in them made absolutely no sense. I tried analyzing them anyway. I could because I was trying to figure out what was wrong with this guy, and none of them made sense. He would randomly send me small amounts of money on the app, I guess in an attempt to get me to talk to him. Fast forward a little bit. The timeline, bear in mind, is slightly messy because this was just constant stress on me, and I was still receiving messages from him every 10 minutes that I wasn't replying to. These were weird. Here are what some of them said. Did you block me? You want to put me out your life? That's fine, but it's an irreversible decision. When you push me out of your life, you don't get me back. When you feel dumb about it later, and you will. I am the best thing that's happened to you in years. It's a privilege you know me. You want to clear a space out for someone more deserving because you're an uppity little so-and-so? No problem. You're not getting rid of me. Stuff like that. I withheld some of the more vile and descriptive ones because it said what he would do to me, and because I didn't like to read or think about them. He would also reply to his own texts almost instantly and apologize for what he said and told me, please don't go and things like that. I finally broke down and told one of my best friends about this, who is also gay, but very muscular and protective of me. I don't know, he just makes me feel safe somehow, and I didn't know who else to tell. He immediately got really mad and took my phone and called him. Best friend told him aggressively that he was my boyfriend, which makes no sense because I wouldn't be on Grindr if I had a boyfriend, and that creepy Grindr guy needs to stop reaching out. The Grindr guy is silent, and then suddenly starts hysterically laughing and making the most inhumane, awful noise I've ever heard, speaking sentences that were English but with words that didn't make any sense when put together. This creeped us out. The look on my friend's face still gives me chills. He never gets uncomfortable, but he was just staring at me with this blank expression, and it was in this moment I realized that I should have just blocked this man as soon as I realized something was off. I didn't know what to do, I guess. After the call, he messaged me a bunch of horrible things, and then says sorry, and this is a cycle of about 15 minutes until he sends me this. The private Facebook messages you may see were all written before our conversation via text and phone tonight, so naturally disregard them. I blocked him. I have no idea what he was on about with the Facebook thing. I looked and couldn't find anything. This final exchange happened about a month and a half ago. I thought this was the end until about 2 weeks ago. I was exploring a nearby large city, and there are loads of big cities around me, and I'm basically in the middle of them, with that same best friend. We're walking out of a museum, and I see someone that looked very familiar leaning against a cement wall to the left of the big stairs that was the entry to the museum. He was staring at us, but I couldn't make anything out about it. I ignored it, and we hopped on the bus to take us to a nearby restaurant for lunch. It wasn't until we got to the restaurant that I realized who this man was. It was him, the creepy Grindr guy. I'm sure of it. I have no idea how he knew where I was, but I knew he traveled over 1,000 miles to come to the area I was living in. I didn't mention it to my friend because I'm seriously creeped out, but I think I'm going to tell him when we hang out again, because I don't want anything to happen to him either. Luckily, I'm moving again in a few weeks, this time very, very far away, and I'm considering taking all of this to the police, but I don't really have many options. This has seriously been the most uncomfortable experience of my entire life.
Grindr horror story. This happened 2 days ago. I live in a small city in Romania, around 30,000 inhabitants. Romania isn't exactly known for their tolerance of gay people. It's not as bad as other places, such as Russia, but the situation is definitely not rosy here either. I get on Grindr and I meet a guy. 18 years old apparently. The guy didn't have a picture of his face as his PFP because it's too dangerous. He had a picture of a rose drawing. Most guys on Grindr here don't have pictures of themselves. We talk for a bit, and I really like the guy. And then we finally accept. I send him a selfie of myself, and he sends me a picture of a guy from our city. He was cute, and I really, really liked him. So I told him, "Hey, I saw you around the city. Didn't know you were gay too." We talk and finally arranged to meet. I had some errands to run at the tailor shop. My cousin's bachelorette party is coming next week, and I had to adjust my favorite shirt. So I asked him to meet me in front of the tailor shop. The building in which the tailor shop is located has 4 stories. The ground floor is a clothes shop, which my aunt works at. The first floor is a storage room. The 3rd floor is a barber's salon, and the 4th floor was the tailor shop. I go to the tailor shop, and then go to the clothes shop on the ground floor to visit my aunt and see how she's doing. As I was looking out the window of the clothes shop, I noticed there were 5 men, all of them in their late 20s, behind the building. None of them was the guy I got a picture of, and none of them even looked remotely close to what the guy looked like. I text the guy I was supposed to meet and ask him if he made it to the tailor shop. As soon as I send the message, one of the 5 guys' phones lit up, and he started texting. As soon as he stopped texting, I got a notification from Grindr. "I'm behind the tailor shop. I went there to smoke so no one would see me. Come smoke with me. I was terrified, as I realized I wasn't going to meet the guy in the picture. He tries to get me to go behind the tailor shop, and I try to get him to the side of it. There were no windows to the side of the building, so after a few tries, he agreed to meet at the side of the tailor shop. All 5 guys went to the side of the tailor shop. I peeked my head from the door, looked left and right, and as soon as I saw my way was clear, I ran from it. Grinder cutie? Let's not meet. Edit. I bumped into the cute guy the next day and started talking to him. I opened my phone and pretended to use it, and I went on Grindr. I saw him look at my screen and ask me, "You're... you know?" I say yes, 'cause I actually knew he was gay too. And he says, "Me too." I told him about the incident, and he got kind of scared, as the guys used his picture. On a more positive note, he agreed to go out with me once school starts again. Update. Grindr horror story. A day after the incident happened, I bumped into the cute guy. I knew he was gay because of a common friend, James, told me that. That was a very dangerous thing. The fact that he told me about it, because he couldn't have known what my relationship with the cutie was. For all James knew, the cutie could have been my worst enemy, and I could have used it to blackmail him. This is why it's dangerous to reveal someone's sexuality, even to a fellow gay person. So what did I do? I opened Grindr on my phone, and placed it in such a way that he could see it, and notice that I'm on Grindr. He looked at my phone and asked, "You're... you know?" To which I answered yes, and he told me he's gay too. I told him about the incident, and he got scared because they used his picture. He asked me what the name of the profile was, then looked on his Grindr and noticed that he talked to them too. He gave them a face pic, and they arranged to meet. But something came up, and the cutie couldn't make it. He said he's glad he couldn't make it. They sent him a picture of another guy I know. I notified him too. Now, to the things I didn't mention in my post. We talked, and he gave me a huge hint. He said, "You see, if you'd actually talked to me that night, you would have gotten yourself an actual date." Now, I was shy, so I didn't give him a direct answer. And after more and more hints, I finally got confidence and said, "Well, looks like yesterday night wasn't a lucky one. Maybe Sunday night will be different?" His answer was, "It will be." Then we went home, and he texted me to see if I got home safely. We went on texting for hours, and he would tell me how I'm a unique person, how he hasn't met anyone like me before, how he loves my unique personality and mentality. Well, I just got back from the date. It was amazing. He told me I'm adorable and that he loves hanging out with me. We set the next date in 2 days, so Tuesday. I want to ask him if he wants to be my boyfriend. And I hope and am confident he will say yes. He couldn't just say all those things and given me all those hints. Wish me luck. I won't make another update post, but I will update this particular post on Tuesday to tell y'all what his decision will be. Cheers to y'all, and thanks for a lot of support and kind comments. I love the fact that you got so concerned for a stranger. It fills me with joy to see this sort of attitude. Virtual hugs to y'all's ways. And don't forget to visit this post again on Tuesday. Love.
Let me start off by saying that I'm a single gay guy, so naturally I use apps like Grindr and Growler. Well, one night I got a message on Grindr from a guy called B-Boy, saying how he sees me all the time, which was kind of creepy to begin with since the profile picture was just a tongue sticking out and no noticeable features. 2 days later, I got another message asking if I smoked the green stuff, to which I replied, sometimes, and he invited me over to his apartment in our complex to smoke, to which I accepted. Everything started off innocent enough. Conversation, smoking, though he seemed like he was already high before I got there, judging by how he was giggling at everything I said. And as the night goes on, he tells me that I need to take the green stuff because it was mine, that I told him to buy it for me, which I didn't, and argued the fact that he offered, that no mention of buying ever occurred, so just shut him down and told him that I would give him $40 the next day after work. Later that night after I left, he proceeds to message me that I need to give him the money or he's going to bring it over, or to my job. Again, I told him I'd bring it over the 40 the next day, and this continued several times the next day while I was at work, and by now he's getting on my nerves. Meanwhile, I tell him that I can't have the green, nor do I want it, and to just give it to someone else. So after work I get the money he's asking for. He tells me that I have to help him pay for his traffic ticket that he got because he went to give me the green and got pulled over for not using a signal. So now he's telling me I have to give him $160 because he can't have a ticket because he's trying to get custody of his kids. Which, looking on it, I doubt was even a factor. So I get another $140 to give him, but now the traffic ticket has gone up to $200, which sends up red flags, and I told him I couldn't or wouldn't pay for it. To be perfectly clear, I'm not giving him money to help him out, but out of self-defense to get him away from me, since I didn't know what to expect just in case he was dangerous. I had to backpedal my steps and tell him I lied about where I lived and worked just so that he wouldn't get them involved. But truthfully, I was just glad I never gave him my name or got his. So he didn't have much to go on besides my physical description. I was afraid that he would go looking in our apartment building asking for me, which is exactly what happened. I quickly hid in the bedroom closet while my roommate answered the door and told him they hadn't seen who he was looking for. I quickly called my boss and told him in a very condensed version what had happened, and told him if someone comes looking for me who doesn't know my name, just what I look like, that I don't work there and that they don't know me. Then I get a barrage of messages asking if I have his cell phone, from at least 5 different phone numbers, so I know they're all him, which is even more suspicious. I didn't reply to any of these, so eventually they stopped, but now I'm scared to leave the apartment except for work, because of that pushy stalker. Let's not meet again. This happened to me around Halloween of 2018. After work I visited friends, and after I went home around 3 a.m.ish, and the bus I take to Burnaby, which is right next to Vancouver, is a long commute, about an hour bus ride. So after 5 minutes and bored, I decided to just check Grindr. After a while, some random guy in his 40s started messaging me with creepy things that he wanted me to come over, to which I replied continuously that I wasn't interested. I should also mention this creepy guy was on the bus and wearing a Chucky costume that did not help with the creepy vibe. I was getting annoyed at the dirty messages, so blocked him. I also saw a lot of people getting off, so I assumed he wasn't on the bus until I hear this creepy voice telling me, "Don't act like you're full of yourself. Come over and we'll have some fun," as he is walking towards my seat. So I proceed to tell him to get lost, and that I'm going back home and he needs to stop. "I'm coming over if you don't want to come to my place." At this point, there was still about 20 minutes left for the bus ride. My phone battery was close to dying, and only drunk girls sitting at the front, so I went and sat close to the driver. Stupid me should have texted the transit police or said something to the driver, but the guy kept staring over and winking at me. When the bus came to a stop, I thought to myself that the nightmare was over, but to my surprise, the creepy guy got off at the same time and asked, "So what's the plan, cutie?" I tried checking my phone and it was dead, and the bus stop is literally by a golf course in the middle of nowhere. I told the guy to go home and leave me alone. He didn't. He was following me, constantly saying dirty things, and I felt the guy trying to keep with my pace and felt his hand touching my shoulder, to which my response was scream to leave me alone, and threw him a branch and ran as fast as I could until I got home. This was a good scare for the Halloween season, but creepy dude, let's not meet again. Hey guys, it's Mort here and thank you so much for listening. I'd like to give a huge thank you to Killer Orange Cat for joining me in tonight's video. I'm going to be honest, without his help, I don't know how far I would have gotten in the YouTube game. He really made a big difference when I first started out. So as always, my friend, thank you. If you'd like to hear more, please follow the link on screen in a little bit, or the link in the description, to follow me over to his channel to listen to the stories we've narrated together. He's just an amazing guy, and I really like the stories he asked me to narrate, so please certainly go check them out. I don't know if you noticed, but all the stories in this video were to do with gay people and their horrific experiences. Seeing as it's June, it's Pride, and I know this isn't exactly a great way to celebrate it, given that they're horror stories and uncomfortable situations, but just a gentle reminder that our gay brothers and sisters are out there, and they deserve the same love and respect as everyone else. Of course, it's the most basic thing. So, I really hope that you liked the video. I really enjoyed making it. People are just terrifying. Like the guy with the altars. Damn. If you see the names of the people on screen and would like your name there, you can check out the link to Patreon in the description to sign up and get some cool rewards. But for now, I would really appreciate it if you would follow me over to Killer Orange Cat's channel and check out the video we did together. It's a lot of fun, it's always a real pleasure working with him, and I hope you like it. But for now, happy Pride. Really wish I'd have said that earlier in the month, to be honest, but I've had this video planned for a while and it's just got a bit delayed. Sorry guys. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.